in the food that we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. Researchers are finding plastics and their associated toxic chemicals in a growing number of species, and they're found in us. Plastics are presenting novel and complex challenges to our life on our planet. Our narrow, compartmentalised and siloed business as usual approaches to the crisis has been proven insufficient. The science is clear, and today we're coming together to say firmly that if we have any hope of resolving the plastic pollution crisis, we need to see the adoption of an international legally binding plastics pollution treaty. The reason for the treaty is that no current international agreement or convention aimed at addressing plastics pollution individually nor collectively deals with the full life cycle of plastics. Most agreements are restricted to marine litter, especially sea-based sources, and virtually all of them focus on waste management, but are weak on design, production, prevention, reduction, and trade. The solutions to the plastics crisis will be as complex and multifaceted as the crisis itself. To be effective, a plastics treaty must address the full life cycle of plastics with actions across the global supply chain to address plastics in their solid, gaseous and liquid forms, and which span from the extraction of raw materials to the remediation of legacy plastics pollution. A new treaty should aim to ensure that the volumes of new plastics decrease. Redesign for reuse and refill and the right to repair must become the norm. It's critical that governments and companies design out hazardous substances and runaway climate emissions from the production, use and disposal of plastics. More than 156 countries have themselves joined the chorus in support of a new global treaty to address the plastics crisis. As of today, 80 states and the European Union have endorsed the Oceans Day Declaration for a legally binding global agreement. Over 120 have endorsed the ministerial statement, and many more countries and regions have expressed their support in global policy forums over the past year. And we're at a pivotal moment in this growing momentum towards a new treaty. Two draft resolutions on marine litter and plastic pollution are currently tabled for discussion at the Committee of Permanent Representatives. At the Committee of Permanent Representative sessions in advance of UNEA 5.2 in 2022. Both resolutions propose to convene an international negotiating committee to begin negotiating a plastics treaty, but there are stark differences between them in terms of the mandate and the overall vision. Peru and Rwanda have jointly submitted a draft resolution that is commensurate with the gravity of the plastic pollution crisis, which resulted from a consultative process engaging many countries. The resolution proposes a comprehensive vision for addressing the problem, taking a full life cycle approach. And as of November 2021, it had 42 co-sponsors. We're asking countries to endorse the ambitious resolution proposed by Rwanda and Peru because this is the only proposal that includes parameters for discussing the comprehensive and complex elements that will be needed to be decided by our governments to reduce toxic harms, reduce plastics pollution in our environment, and frankly, to save lives. Unlike the Japan resolution, the Rwanda-Peru resolution goes beyond marine and sea-based plastic pollution to address plastic pollution in all environments. The Rwanda-Peru resolution takes a full life cycle approach rather than continuing to focus on downstream solutions. These downstream solutions are approaches that are all too well proven to be dismally globally ineffective. The Rwanda-Peru resolution also sets out an open mandate for the INC to negotiate a complete international framework and supportive institutional structures, including financial and scientific mechanisms and coordination with existing instruments. This resolution has widespread support among civil society organisations. A legally binding treaty will work with existing MEAs or multilateral environmental agreements to plug the gaps and strengthen globally coordinated efforts. Regional and national action plans will of course be key to our success in ending the harms from plastics and plastic pollution, and will be needed for a start and strengthened approach to a global treaty. But alone, they will not be sufficient to scale up to the scale of the crisis, and thus we must act together for the ambitious, legally binding, and globally collaborative action our treaty can offer. I'm honoured to participate in this announcement today of our collective call to action to governments to move away from false solutions and toward real solutions to the world's plastics crisis. We are from civil society, Indigenous peoples, workers and trade unions, women and children and youth, representing now more than 750 groups and organisations from all facets of the human experience. Signatories are from more than 120 countries on 6 continents, representing several million members, volunteers and community members globally. This joint call to action is the first of its kind focused on a new treaty on plastics, and we are pleased to welcome a few of the leaders who have signed the call, along with honoured representatives from some of the countries that are leading the way toward a free world from the harmful impacts of plastics on human life, human rights, biodiversity, and the climate. So I'm very, very pleased now to introduce the first of our civil society speakers. I'd like to introduce now Marilyn Kizon-Mikado from the World Wildlife Fund for her to give her presentation. We're going to have some other civil society representatives speaking and someone from Indigenous Peoples, Imogen Ingram from the Cook Islands Sustainability Alliance, and then that will be followed by a Q&A, and then we'll follow from that with some interventions from government representatives. So first and foremost, again, a very warm welcome to you, Marilyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Good morning to everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. So, dear colleagues, it is my great pleasure to speak on behalf of WWF today. WWF is honored to be part of this initiative, and we are excited to see more than 750 organizations worldwide supporting the call for a new legally binding global agreement on plastic pollution. More than 2.1 million individuals have voiced their support for a new legally binding global agreement on plastic pollution through WWF's global petition. And 25 financial institutions and more than 60 companies globally have also called for the start of negotiations. With this newly launched call for action from civil society organizations, the true global movement for this new treaty is stronger than ever, as the world unites to take its first collective step towards a future free of plastic pollution at the upcoming resumed 5th session of the UN Environment Assembly. It is evident that plastic pollution has severe consequences for nature, people's livelihoods and well-being, and incurred direct and indirect costs to economies worldwide. Asia, as a region, is severely impacted by the plastic pollution crisis. Plastic production and consumption is increasing rapidly with economic growth. Marginalized communities disproportionately bear the cost of the plastic life cycle and climate change, which the plastics life cycle is already contributing to, disproportionately affecting disadvantaged groups. A new legally binding agreement on plastic pollution can create the necessary common global rules to help the global community tackle transboundary plastic pollution by considering the full range of possible regulatory measures throughout the plastics life cycle, such as prohibitions on the production, use and/or sale of certain categories of plastics deemed to pose a particular risk to the environment, including certain single-use plastic products, explicit bans on certain acts considered to defeat the object and purpose of the new global agreement, including deliberate dumping of plastic waste in river systems and internal waters, global technical requirements for products, recycling, and waste management, amongst others. The negotiation mandate expected at UNEA 5.2 is a critical milestone and could, to a large extent, lay the foundation for actions on plastic pollution at all levels and across the plastics value chain, possibly harnessing the full potential of harmonized and common global rules for decades to come. Therefore, it is essential that the mandate must unambiguously state the legally binding status of the agreement to be negotiated and allow for negotiations on specific common rules and all relevant measures, including global standards and bans, to effectively and efficiently stop plastic pollution. WWF looks forward to contributing to this movement and to collaborating with all of you through all our national offices worldwide to get a new, ambitious, legally binding global agreement on plastic pollution adopted. Thank you very much, and looking to a good day ahead of us.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. And thank you too for all your contributions so far, and we very much look forward to continuing working with you into the future on this and beyond, at 5.2 in February in Nairobi. So I'd like now to pass on to Mageswari Sangaralingam. Now, Magas is going to be beaming in via a pre-recorded presentation. We look forward to this. So, Mageswari.
Hello from Malaysia. I am Mageswari Sangaralingam, representing Friends of the Earth Malaysia. Plastic pollution is a transboundary and serious problem with significant and long-lasting social, economic, and environmental impacts. Coming from a country that became the top destination of the world's plastic waste after China shut its borders in 2018, we view that the problems caused by the international plastic waste trade requires global collaboration across the board from a systemic perspective. Ultimately, tackling plastic waste trade requires a solid commitment to reducing plastics and plastic waste in the first place. Plastics pose significant threats to human health and ecosystems throughout their life cycles. Thus, a real transformation is needed to address the issue, from extraction of raw material, production, transportation, consumption, recycling, and to plastic waste management. It is time for the world to reach a global, legally binding agreement on plastics, as this is a key element in meaningfully confronting the growing plastic crisis. In February 2022, countries will meet at the United Nations Environment Assembly to discuss the global instrument. Prior to this, we need to have our voices heard on how this treaty should be shaped. The treaty must prioritize reduction in the production of new plastic, develop infrastructure to stop and address existing plastic pollution, tackle toxic recyclings. It must focus on preventing harm to people and the environment, not protecting the industries and corporation interests. We need to encourage the engagement of civil society, communities, trade unions, workers, indigenous communities to advocate for a treaty that addresses the full life cycle of plastics. We must get involved in dialogues with our country delegation to UNEA. This is very important to ensure our interests are taken into account in any decision made in relation to the treaty. We want a comprehensive treaty to be negotiated. This should include the means of implementing the new agreement. The time to act is now. Join the call to action. Thank you.
And thank you very much to Mageswari Sangaralingam from Friends in Malaysia for the Earth there. And we also would really like to thank for their work that they've done, certainly for giving voice to those at the coalface of plastics trade as well. So appreciate all the work that has been done there. And now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Sharia Hussain, Secretary General and Senior Technical Advisor, Environment and Social Development Organisation, ESDO, in Bangladesh. So, Dr. Hussain, the floor is yours. I think we've got you on mute at the moment, Sharia. You might need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Dear friends and colleagues, we live with a fake plastic pollution solution. Toxic hazards, hazardous chemicals can leach when downcycled materials are exposed to heat, UVs, and water. And resulting microplastic have the potential attract more pollutants such as PCBs, turns plastic waste into the materials of low quality products are no longer recyclable. Plastic-based construction material presents major fire hazards. Toxic chemicals with plastic hazards bring biggest threat to life and food chain. Friends, single-use plastic waste causes biggest disaster on or before COVID-19 pandemic. Just in Bangladesh, a small country in South Asia with 8 polluted country of the world generate around 100,000 of single-use plastic waste annually, which comes solely from food and personal care product packaging. As we know, contamination of the plastic litter can spread virus beyond our imagination. Plastic pollution is a growing problem, and it's a global problem, a transboundary challenge that require global action. So we should beat plastic pollution. Solutions are to address the full life cycle of plastics. Colleagues, as we know, more than 121 states have support for a treaty of plastic pollution. We are hoping that countries from all over the world will support the requirement for a global agreement of new legally binding treaty on plastic pollution and endorse the Rwanda-Peru draft declaration. We believe all nations will support to establish intergovernmental negotiation process at UNIA 5.2 in February 2022. We also urge the member state to support and ensure full participation and engagement of civil society, indigenous peoples, workers, and trade union in the INC process. We look forward to work together to make our planet toxic and plastic pollution free for a generation to come. So all nations should come forward and support legally binding plastic treaty with full life cycle. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hussain. It's good to see you, and again for you as well, all the wonderful work that you've been doing and shedding the light on the toxic impacts caused by the full life cycle of plastic. So thank you very much for your intervention there. Now we've got a couple of speakers who haven't turned up yet, so we're looking forward to them coming soon. But in the meantime, you might want to leave your camera on again, Sharia, because I'm going to be asking you a question, and also Marilyn. And the question I'd like to pose to both of you, if I may, perhaps with Marilyn first, responding to the question, is as follows. How can members of civil society, Indigenous peoples and workers and trade unions, women and other groups advocate with their own governments to push for the support for a treaty? So Marilyn, would you like to respond to that question first? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tricia, for that question. Well, I think they could join or organizations or initiatives like this, at least to show that that not only, for example, businesses or other sectors are in support of this new legally global binding agreement. So I think there is, as they say, there is strength in numbers. So they can join initiatives like this. They can, with these platforms, they can voice out their concerns, their specific concerns, and their suggestions, so that this can all be consolidated for the consideration of this new legally global binding agreement.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. And to you, Sharia.
Thank you, Teresa. We believe that raising the public voice is very important at this moment. So the civil society organizations, trade unions, labor organizations need to address the local issue first and raise the public voice. So demand should be created from the nation and to educate the government. This is most important, that many countries still doesn't have the clear views about the plastic treaties and INC process. So we should work together, and we have the expertise with our networks, individual organizations. We need to share this issue, this process to the government. But for most important is to raise public voice locally. So if we can raise the public voice locally, it will hurt to the nation and national government. So that fosters the process, as I believe.
Many thanks for that. Great answers to my question. I appreciate that. And I guess too, what is important at this particular juncture is to ensure that governments and organisations within our own countries also understand the differences and similarities between the two resolutions that are tabled for us at the moment, and talk about why perhaps the Rwanda Peru resolution is really going to meet all the needs of all the things that we've discussed about so far in this meeting. So thank you for that. Now, I've just learned that we don't have Imogen Ingram from the Cook Islands for our Indigenous group just yet, nor do we have our state representative from Tokelau. However, we're going to move straight on to introducing a pre-recording of something from His Excellency the Ambassador of Peru to the UN in Geneva, and then we'll hope that our other two speakers will be available after that. Now, just to remind you, of course, that the Rwanda-Peru resolution is obviously who drafted this. So one of the countries is Peru, so we're looking forward to hearing a presentation from His Excellency in relation to this resolution.
Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Center for International Environmental Law for the invitation to this important event on the occasion of the launch of the call to action for a new global agreement to address the global plastic crisis. As you might already know, Peru and Rwanda, with a group of countries, are putting forward a draft resolution to end marine litter and plastic pollution. As of today, 45 member states from different regions across the world are co-sponsoring this resolution: Azerbaijan, Cabo Verde, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, the European Union and its member states, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Guinea, Kenya, Madagascar, Norway, Philippines, Senegal, Switzerland, Uganda, and United Kingdom join Peru and Rwanda in this endeavor to move forward in addressing marine litter and plastic pollution. We are expecting more countries to support this resolution in the coming days. We believe that the moment has come to take concrete actions, in particular at the upcoming UNEA 5.2. This initiative builds upon previous resolution of the UNEA, as well as important inputs received by the civil society, and is put forward under the firm conviction that greater international measures are needed to prevent and reduce plastic pollution in the environment, including microplastic. The main purpose of the resolution is to convene an intergovernmental negotiation committee, INC, and establish an open mandate for negotiations to develop a new legally binding global instrument. This new legally binding instrument should be based on a comprehensive approach to prevent and reduce plastic pollution in the environment by promoting a circular economy in addressing the full life cycle of plastics, from production, consumption, and design to waste prevention and management and treatment. We consider it important to have key elements considered in this future instrument, such as shared objectives, reporting and monitoring aspects, national action plans and commitments, scientific and technical support, as well as financial and technical assistance. Peru is confident that the call to action put forward by the civil society will provide important support to this initiative. My delegation will continue to engage all relevant stakeholders, including civil society, in an open, transparent, participatory, and inclusive manner. I would like to thank the organizers again for promoting this event in order to build momentum on this crucial matter, which I am sure will contribute to pave the way towards a new agreement that will tackle such an important issue as plastic pollution. Thank you very much.
And that was wonderful to hear straight from the words of the mouth of His Excellency from Peru. So we really appreciate the time he took to put that recording together so that we could hear that today. We don't have any other speakers left. We've come to the end of our presentation, and we want to thank you so much for joining us. We know that it's coming quite close to Christmas time for many people, sort of, for holidays. So we thank you for joining us today. And I just, without further ado, I'd just like to just add that if you have any more questions about this process in terms of working with governments to advocate for a legally binding plastic pollution treaty, please do not hesitate to contact Jane Patton from CL, from the Centre for International Environmental Law. She's ready and waiting for your call and to support you, and we all are in any way that we possibly can. Please share your email addresses, your contact details here. We're all in this together, and the more that we can advocate with and alongside each other, the better that we're going to do to achieve our outcomes. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I wish you very, very well. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you, Sharia. Thank you very much, Marilyn, for joining us today. Thank you for those who sent their pre-recorded presentations, and we appreciate your time, and thank you for responding to the question that I had for you here today. Any other questions, I'm sure you'd be able to communicate with the presenters in the future via email. So thank you all so much, and I wish you a very wonderful day or evening, whichever time zone you've joined us in. Thank you. Bye now.